major overhaul on offense this past offseason, Dave Gettleman, you have to give Dave Gettleman his props. And I don't care what gripes you have about what Dave Gettleman has done in the past. If this team isn't good, it's going to be because of Daniel Jones. Okay, you have Joe Judge, who showed a lot of promise in his first year as the head coach for the Giants. He showed a little bit of reminiscent for what happened with Brian Flores his first year in Miami. This was a team that didn't start out great, but in the second half of the year, they really picked up momentum, especially when they put off that big upset against the Seattle Seahawks. And what a lot of people aren't talking about is that this team almost came close to winning the division. If they didn't get screwed over the last week of the season by the Philadelphia Eagles, this team probably could have been in the playoffs. Now, I don't know how competitive this team would have been. I don't know if they would have been as competitive as what Washington was against Tampa Bay, because there's no way you could have told me you expected Washington to have the chance they had at beating Tampa Bay in that playoff game with Taylor Heinicke at quarterback. So for Washington, I understand why a lot of people are high on this team. My biggest swing games for Washington are Week 7 against Carolina, Week 11 on the road against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And remind you that swing games are not make or break games, must win games, whatnot. Swing games are games that you're going to look back at the end of the season and you're going to say, okay, if we won this game, maybe our season could have went this way. Or our season went this way because we lost to this team. We lost this game. So I think that Carolina game is really interesting because you have two teams who are pretty much in similar situations. You have two head coaches who had a pretty good amount of success their first year, per se, in terms of what the overall expectation was for the New York Giants. I only had them winning 3 games, and a lot of people weren't high on the Carolina Panthers last season. So you have two head coaches who showed a lot of promise in their first year. Now you have the expectations ramping up where you have a good amount of people who believe that the Panthers are a playoff caliber football team. Panthers fans are expecting to make it to the playoffs, and Giants fans out there, a good amount of you guys are expecting the Giants to make it to the playoffs this season. So that Week 7 game is a really great game to watch in terms of trying to determine who's going to be that next team to take that step up from the bottom of the barrel of their division to making it all the way into the playoffs. You have two teams who are in similar situations. Week 11 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I believe that this is a really big game for the Giants because Giants fans, remember, you almost beat the Buccaneers last year. You had the Buccaneers on the rope. You went into a 5-round championship fight, and you were able to get through the first 4 rounds. But then once round 5 came, you just couldn't quite do what you had to do to pull off the upset. You guys remember when Kel Sonnen, Uncle Kel, fought Anderson Silva the first time they met up? I mean, my guy was really close to pulling off one of the biggest upsets, not just in combat sports history, but in sports history in general. Nobody gave Uncle Kel a chance of beating Anderson Silva. And he went in there and gave Anderson Silva all he had. But then when it came down to it, that last round, he wasn't able to close out. And that's what happened with the New York Giants last year. So I think that Buccaneers game definitely is a very big swing game because if the Giants win that game, I think the morale and the momentum for that team is going to be through the roof at a very important time of the season. Best case scenario for the New York Giants, 12-5. I've been telling people all this offseason that how good this team is going to be is going to be determined by how well Daniel Jones plays this year. If Daniel Jones is the Daniel Jones that we saw last year, they're not going to be any good. But if Daniel Jones balls out, on top of that Patrick Graham-led defense, this team could end up being one of the biggest surprises this year. And not only that, they could be a team that could end up having one of the better records in the NFC. 12-5. So for the New York Giants, man, like, the sky is the limit. Like, I think that the Giants and the Broncos are the two teams that have the most upside this year. There are two teams that if everything goes right, they're going to be really, really good. And if Daniel Jones can at least lower his turnover numbers in half, I think that he could be in for, a really great season. You bring in Kadarius Toney from the draft, round 1. You bring in Kenny Galladay. You got weapons. You got Saquon coming back. The Giants didn't really address the offensive line as much as what I would hope. But apparently this coaching staff has a lot of high praise and the young guys that they have in this offensive line. And Joe Judge trusts his coaching staff to be able to have these guys ready to come week 1 to the point that they're going to be better than what they were last year. So I'm going to trust Joe Judge, and I'm going to trust the overall organization for the New York Giants judgment when it comes to their offensive line. It's Young had a lot of growing pains last season, but apparently this organization really trusts the coaching staff, and they trust the young players that they have in this offensive line to be able to develop the way they expect. Now, worst case, 4-13. The Giants have a lot of upside, but if Daniel Jones is the Daniel Jones that we saw reminiscent of last season, this team isn't going to be any good. Honestly, I think worst case is 4-13. This team is either going to be really good or they're going to be downright awful. They're going to be similar to what the Philadelphia Eagles were last year. There were some people who said the Eagles can be really good, and there were a lot of people who said the Eagles can be really bad. If things go wrong, things are going to go awfully wrong. And for the Giants, if they go 4-13, I think it's because of Daniel Jones and Jason Garrett. Jason Garrett not putting Daniel Jones in the proper situations to succeed, and Daniel Jones turning the football over too much. So 4-13 is my expectation of what can go possibly wrong if Daniel Jones doesn't improve like how Giants fans expect him to improve. Now, my overall record prediction for the New York Giants this season is 7-10. I think that the Giants are a team that's definitely trending in the right direction, but overall, I just feel like it's really hard for me to trust Daniel Jones. It really is. This is a guy who is a turnover machine, similar to my guy Jameis Winston. But at the same time, it's not just Daniel Jones, it's that offensive line. That offensive line is really young. And these Giants coaches and this Giants organization is banking on these guys producing this year and improving over the course of the offseason, training camp, and preseason. I don't really know. I really think that New York should have put a little bit more emphasis on trying to improve the offensive line. So this offensive line is really hit and miss. Daniel Jones could be really hit and miss. And even if Daniel Jones thinks it up, I think that their defense should be able to bail them out in a couple of games. But overall, I don't think that this defense is going to be able to carry the load if Daniel Jones continues to turn the football over like he has in the past. And everybody's saying all they need Daniel Jones to be is a game manager. But how are you going to say somebody needs to be a game manager when that's not really what they are? Like, you can't just say they need somebody to be something that they're not. I don't think Daniel Jones is a game manager. This is a guy who likes to push the envelope. He's aggressive. He likes to take chances. He is the white version of Jameis Winston, pretty much. So for the Giants, man, like, yeah, if Daniel Jones and this offensive line mesh, they go 12-5. If not, they can end up going 4